We'd like to welcome Rick Stein from the FMI, who's going to talk to us now about the power of food service. Welcome.
Thank you, Jim. And thanks everyone for showing up. I appreciate it. FMI is about to release their second year of the power of food service at retail. This is a study that we do with consumers, but what makes this interesting, we all know when we ask consumers questions, what they say they do versus what they actually do sometimes differs. So when we get the research back, we get together with IRI and Nielsen, some other data warehouses. We pull in the data, and when you juxtapose the data against their answers, it really creates a robust story. So let me get started. Let's just talk about retail in general. Supermarkets right now are experiencing just less than 1% growth, and some of that is some inflation. If we look at fresh though, fresh is growing a little bit stronger. So total center store sales are down 1%, but fresh sales are up 0.8. So that's about 180 basis points of disparity between fresh and the center of the store. And when you look at deli specifically, and when I call deli, it's a combination of deli and food service, it's one of the stronger performers in terms of both growth and volume at the supermarket. We got together with Nielsen, and they did a big study in terms of retailers that have really strong ID sales. And they looked at what was in common. And what we saw was the retailers that had a very strong deli food service business were some of the winners in terms of highest volume. So you look at these stores that are having really high volume and fresh, 29% of their business is in the deli fresh prepared, whereas the stores that are in lower volume, they're only doing about 14% of their business in deli fresh prepared. So it was a clear indicator that as you develop your deli fresh prepared area, you're going to win in overall fresh. When we look at just the deli prepared area, the food service side, so that's at a 2.7% sales growth. Again, really leading the charge in terms of supermarket sales growth. It's a big growth engine. And we see all the different retailers really moving into this business in a big way. We measure, it's funny, I got together with Nielsen, I got together with IRI. We couldn't land on a solid number. But the number we're kind of using is deli prepared's around 15 billion. And if you look at that, the growth, I have a fast clicker hand. If you look at the growth of some of the subcategories, you'll see the size and the growth going down here on the right on some of the subcategories. Overall, a 2.7% increase, but some of the subcategories are up 3.2, 2.8. Sushi is exploding, as we all know, at 17. Of course, it's off a small base. Retailers are looking to capitalize on this popularity. So we survey our retailers. We represent about 1,200 retailers, representing about 40,000 stores. And we annually send them a survey, the CEOs, and ask them for feedback on key questions. One of the things they're telling us is that 88% of them are telling us they're going to expand their grab and go. So that's very telling. They're going to allocate more space to made to order, more space to self-service, and we're also looking at a commitment to hiring trained employees. So clearly this food service at retail has really captured our retailers' attention, and they're going to start staffing it. There's a great opportunity to grow though. Only 1 in 10 trips to the supermarket include deli prepared. So one of the key takeaways I'll talk about when we get to the end of this is taking the opportunity to convert shoppers that are buying their groceries over to the deli prepared area. One size doesn't fit no one. We realize that there's all kinds of different offerings that you have to have and methods of going. So you have to start thinking about age, income, ethnicity, the area, the country, cooking patterns. There's a lot of complexity in the food service area. So I mentioned this is our second year of the food service study. We're graciously supported by Hussman, the Shelby Report, IRI, and Nielsen. And today I'm going to talk about understanding the opportunity, channel choice, the dinner decision, technology, ordering ease, nutrition, ambiance, variety and selection, solution types and meal kits, and the key takeaways. So let's just talk about the opportunity. So if we just look at an opportunity as 7 days of the week, about 4 of our respondents, about 4.9 of those days, there's a home cooked with some level of preparation. And we're definitely seeing a hybrid approach. So we know that some consumers are going to the supermarket or going to a fast food chain, buying a portion of the meal there, taking it home, and then preparing it from scratch items. But we're seeing that being done at about 4.9. 2.1 days a week, they're doing takeout, delivery, dining out, fresh prepared. So big opportunity to convert here. And of those that are cooking at home, 37% of that 4.9 said they were doing it mostly from scratch. But this is that other part I was talking about. The 55% are doing this mix of scratch and fully prepared, and that is growing exponentially. So this idea of a supermarket selling components of the meal as opposed to the entire meal is becoming very popular. And then 8% rely mostly on that fully or semi-prepared items. Shoppers buy deli prepared at a supermarket once every 3 weeks, you know? So when you start thinking about that, you just see all the opportunity there is. And you know, what we're trying to do is if you can just get one more, if you get them to convert one more time within that 3 weeks, you exponentially grow. And I'll get into what some of the opportunity is. You know, are they in a rush? So an easy meal that takes a little time and effort, 52% said they're looking for that. 33% said they're looking to eat out or pick up from a restaurant. And only 14% start talking about picking up or eating at a grocery, deli, fresh prepared, or food service at retail. So we're seeing retailers starting to get POS that talks about it. You know, skip the takeout, go with Greenwise is one of Public's signs where they're trying to create meals that can be taken out. So we're trying to appeal to that customer that has that in the mindset. And when they're not in the mood to cook, 69% eat out or pick up or order from a restaurant, and only 31% pick up and eat at a grocery retail. So again, it's not top of mind. Why is food service not on the radar? We asked the consumers, and they said 68% just don't think about grocery deli, even though it's a perfectly good solution. And I found that really interesting. So as you start to interview these consumers, and now they're isolated, they're sitting down, they're answering the question, they kind of scratch your head and they go, well, really, now that I think about it, I could have met all those needs at my supermarket. It just didn't come to mind. I'm not thinking about it. And 32% said that grocery deli is just not a viable option. It doesn't have what they want when they want it. So fixing the disconnect, you know, 92%, you know, reasons for buying grocery deli, 92% of those that do it, and remember we talked about there's a small proportion that do that, 31%, but of that, 92% they combine it with their grocery shopping. Look at the numbers of why, you know, they think that supermarket food service is cheaper. They think supermarket food service has more cuisines, and they also think it's closer or easier to get. Only 68% see it as healthier, and only 20% see it as a home delivery option. So again, as we give this information to our members, we see lots of upside and learnings that they can use to develop their food service. Using in-store direct mail and ad online is a lot of the opportunities that our retailers use. So you have in-store signage, you have the ability to online to talk about their meal kits, and of course in the ad. Lunch is another growth opportunity, mostly for the urban shoppers. We see that as a big opportunity. Eating a deli prepared for lunch, 20% said they've never used a supermarket, 30% say they use it less than once a month, 28% every few weeks, 16% every week. So there's again opportunity for that, and the opportunity lies more in the urban areas. My overall take, and I'll get to it at the very end, is what supermarkets are needing to do is they continue to deal with their food service as a department within the store. So they think they have a produce department, they have a meat department, they have a bakery, they have center of the store, and they have food service. if they are really going to develop and become part of that consumers on their radar, we're recommending they start to treat that deli food service as if it's its own business, because they're competing against restaurants and all the plethora of opportunities for consumers to get their meals, but they treat it as a portion of the store. So the consumer's not thinking of Rick's food service offering, they're thinking of Rick's Supermarket, and then they might use my food service offerings. Okay, so when it comes to channel choice, supermarkets are still claim the top spot for grocery budget. So, again, when it comes to buying groceries, their share is, 60 share versus supercenters and so on. So when it comes to getting groceries, supermarkets win. When it comes to buying food service meal, 50% replaces a home-cooked meal. So one of the things that supermarkets are in this quandary with is that when their customers buying the meal at the food service, they're replacing the meal that they would have bought in the meat department, the produce in the center of the store. 50% of them are just saying, okay, now I'm going to buy something here at the deli, as opposed to only 12% of them, you're replacing that restaurant meal. And so a supermarket doesn't win at the end of the day if all they do is steal sales from their meat department and their produce in center of the store. What they've got to do is start thinking about, how do I get that customer who is going to go to a restaurant to come over to the supermarket? 50% buy their deli prepared not at their primary store, which we also found interesting. So we asked the consumers, where do you primarily shop? I primarily shop at Rick's Supermarket. Where do you buy your supermarket food service? Oh, I buy it at Ann's Supermarket. So it's kind of interesting that they switch the banner when it comes to buying their fresh prepared as opposed to their primary food purchase. So this idea of retailers thinking that I'm going to take that shopper that's going up and down my aisles and convert him to my deli, again goes back to my premise of they got to start treating it as if it's its own brand. Because when a retailer does treat it as its own brand, they're getting consumers from other supermarkets to come visit them. And I think there's some great examples in the country of that. I think we all know Wegmans does a phenomenal job. Hy-Vee does a great job. Market 32 has gotten into this, some of the Kroger divisions. We ask consumers about technology and how is technology working at supermarkets. And so, the use of technology to determine where and what to eat, what we see is this big bubble of sometimes. But, in terms of the supermarket, if you look at, the boomers, much higher on the never use technology, and the millennials, the young millennials are obviously using it much more often. Highly desired functionality, menu prices and specials. This is what they're looking for on the technology. They want to know what your menu is, what your prices are, and what your specials are. The dinner decision tree. And just to kind of set a baseline, I'm covering about 40% of the information on this report. This report goes very deep into food service at retail. It'll be available at FMI after the first of the year. So I know I'm skipping through a lot of parts, but I could be here for 3 hours talking about the report. So I'm trying to cover the highlights for you, and then I'll wrap it up at the end with some of the key takeaways. So price dominates. When we started asking consumers, what are the big factors when you're determining you're going to buy food service at retail? And price, 57% ranked it as first. Speed and nutrition were almost equal. 18% ranked speed as first, and 18% ranked nutrition as first. And then in fourth place was Ambiance. That's that whole, we're seeing a lot of design and store, layout to accommodate this food service at retail. So the takeaway for our retailers is to really start to emphasize those pieces, and not all of them do it. So there are some supermarkets that have food service and you have to check out in the regular line. So that's not going to meet the speed component. And in terms of healthy choices, consumers are demanding that more and more. And what you'll see in supermarkets is a huge disparity of their evolution in food service. So you'll go from supermarkets that have full sit-down wait staff restaurants to supermarkets that have a rotisserie chicken and a grab-and-go area. And so when you have that huge disparity and you ask consumers questions, consumers only know what they know. So if you're in a market where there is no sophisticated food service and you ask a consumer what they're looking for in food service, they're not going to give you the same answer as a consumer that's living near a Hy-Vee or a Wegmans or a Price Chopper that offers a huge plethora of different offerings. So when you look at the data, you have to be real careful how you interpret the data because you have to understand where that consumer is answering from. So they talk about grab-and-go ordering ahead, highly desired feature, and supermarkets have a long ways to go on this. They haven't adapted technology as quickly as they need to. So the young millennials are using Grubhub, they're using individual restaurant websites, they can order, they can have it delivered, they can make the reservation. Supermarkets have not developed that as quickly, but the consumers are telling us that's what they want. They want that information, they want to be able to do it ahead of time. And so we have seen some kiosks developed. There are some, here's a Wawa that has mobile ordering. There's express checkouts, this whole idea of speed and convenience. Retailers are starting to adapt to that. And the emphasis is on communicating speed across the solutions. So you'll see, it's for busy people, easy, quicker. They're trying to convey that they're going to address this speed issue because they have a bad reputation on it. And from ready to eat to heat and eat. So again, it's telling them that you can have meals in minutes for just $10.99, meals as easy as 1, 2, 3. So whether it's ready to eat or you have to heat and eat, they're trying to convey this idea of it's convenient, it's fast. And then cross-merchandising for shopping, speed, and ease. And that's that ability to do, supermarkets can do a great job of cross-merchandising opportunities throughout their store to sell fresh prepared or food service items. Let's talk a little bit about nutrition and balance and health. So the health-focused consumer also puts nutrition as #1 in food service. So we saw that 18% kind of said health is the most important thing for them. And when you look at this focus on healthy nutrition meals, on an answer of 1 through 5, where health is the most important, you can see that 55% are saying they are focused on health when it comes to food service at retail. And that's a big number, and that's increased tremendously over the last 6-7 years. I worked for a retailer, I won't say the name, but we used to call our deli food service Go Brown. All it had was fried chicken, JoJo potatoes, if it was brown, we had it. And that consumer's not looking for that now. They're looking for healthy choices. And so a lot of restaurants are leveraging this health and wellness. Now you got Subway trying to tell you they're the health destination. When Subway's telling you they're the health destination, you got to wake up and start paying attention to health needs, But you'll see it throughout different food service. McDonald's is trying really hard to appeal to a health-conscious consumer. So, when I start thinking of health and wellness, the first two names in my mind are not McDonald's and Subway. But they're spending a lot of time trying to convince consumers that there's an option there for them. And 84%, when they're focused on nutrition, talk about the freshness and the quality. They want to have a call out on artificial ingredients. They want to make sure that they have healthier alternatives and also controlled portion size, which I thought was really interesting. That consumers are already aware they have to control the portion size, and they're looking for food service at retail to help them achieve that. They want to address different need states, So comfort foods, they're going to have a selection there, but then they're also going to have a living well and seasonal selection. So it doesn't mean, a lot of retailers will tell you that fried chicken is one of their top items in food service. And we're not suggesting that they would drop an item because it's not healthy. What we are asking is that you create an alternative so that consumer that's looking for it. And there's rapid growth, free from artificial preservatives, growing at 9%, antioxidants at 8%, natural at 8%. These are significant growth, and look at some of the size of these categories at food service at retail. So Again, just proving that health is important, and the consumers have said so, and the retailers, we're seeing it in the sales. The restaurant's calorie labeling is influencing a third of the respondents. So as we all know, the FDA has issued a mandate for menu labeling if you have 20 or more establishments. And so a lot of our retailers have started to establish that. And it's just as the Obamas thought would happen is happening. As consumers now have caloric values on different foods, they're making different decisions. And our retailers are facing that now. So the idea of having healthier options is going to be necessary. And they're going to have to start thinking of how to create an appealing, tasty, healthy alternative and different cuisines as this menu labeling takes effect. But as of now, only a third of the consumers say they even notice it. I think when we do the survey again in a year, that'll increase a lot. I think the implementation for menu labeling is May. So when we start to look at this in 2019 or at the end of 2018, we'll probably see a big difference in how many consumers are making a decision off of caloric labeling. And so we're seeing, sweet indulgence continues to grow, but now you're going to have menu, calorie counts on it. You're going to continue to see healthy alternatives right next to the sweet indulgence. So again, it's a matter of not taking away sweet indulgence, but it's also having that opportunity to offer the customer healthy alternatives. And leveraging nutritional call-outs on the signage. So you're going to see a lot more POS really talking about the value of different foods and creating a system to communicate healthy alternatives to consumers. And you'll see the calorie and nutritional insight approaches where you begin to see we have one retailer that's starting to give the caloric intake on a per spoonful. So, consumers are like, I only want this much of it, and you're telling me that it's 500 calories per pound. I can't convert that. So now retailers are getting smart and they're saying, okay, we'll just tell you how much it is per spoon or how much it is per ounce. And then we also are seeing a big influx of retail dietitians being available to answer consumers. And that's becoming a very popular way, too, to communicate healthy insights. I'm going to talk briefly about Ambiance. We're seeing a lot of innovation in Ambiance. So I believe this was a Subway. So I don't know about the Subway you shop at, but mine does not have a fireplace and a little lounge area. I thought that was kind of interesting. I believe this is also another Subway over here. I believe that was a Wendy's, and that was a Wendy's. So when you see these type of chains getting into Ambiance, it lets you know that there's a group of consumers there that are looking for that. And so what does Ambiance mean? Most of the time the consumers mean it's a clean seating area. They want to be able to have made-to-order variety and pre-made variety and trained chefs. And then it works its way down to table service and so on. And here's some, just some pictures of what different retailers are doing in terms of Ambiance. I think the one that got really famous was Mariano's up in Chicago, where they were really doing the big parties and they had the liquor license and the growlers and things like that. But we're seeing this across the country where you're really trying to create an atmosphere that allows that consumer to sit down and eat right there at the store. And the opportunity to drive the chef angle, 65% trained chefs and deli personnel are important. Consumers give them credit for being more knowledgeable or equally knowledgeable versus restaurants. So if you have a chef, you're going to get credit for that at food service at retail. And then having chef inspired, this idea of trying to make sure that your consumer knows that you have a chef on staff, and doing that in your POS really resonates with the consumer, and they believe that they're getting a higher quality food that's more unique. Variety and selection. So you got to be really careful and target your investment. What we're trying to tell our retailers is they have a tendency right now to be a mile wide and an inch deep. And what they're trying to do is they want to appeal to every consumer on everything. Eventually, they're going to have to do just what the restaurants have done and start to create reputational items. So they're really going to have to make tough decisions on what they're going to carry and how they're going to carry it, and begin to refine that selection and become known for certain items. I mean, that's the direction we're going to send them. So, you know, you only know, remember I was saying, depending on your market, you only know what you know, right? So I thought this quote was kind of interesting. You know, Henry Ford said if he had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So, you know, if you're asking a consumer that all they know is a rotisserie chicken and that's the extent of their food service, they're going to tell you they want a bigger rotisserie chicken or a faster cooked rotisserie chicken. If you go to a consumer that, you know, I was in a market district in Pittsburgh, which is run by Giant Eagle, and it felt like food trucks just lined up. They had all these different cuisines. They had a behind the house efficiencies in terms of the fresh prepared, and it had a very different feel than, say, a supermarket that only had rotisserie chickens. So, you know, when you ask shoppers who have variety, they love variety. And again, you know, I keep saying the same thing. You only know what you know, but once you're exposed to having variety, that's what consumers want. And that's when they start saying, I want more specials, I want things texted to me, emailed to me. So our guidance is to retailers that don't have a sophisticated food service, we need to paint the picture of if you did, this is what consumers would want. And again, they want more variety beyond chicken. They want seasonal, frequent rotation of offerings, local menu lineup of the week, you know, the daily special, things of that nature. Urban shoppers see variety a little differently. You know, 11% want a good beer wine selection, 10% increase in terms of vegetarian options, good drink selection, surprise chef-inspired meal of the day. Again, they're frequenting, if you're in an urban area, you're probably frequenting the supermarket food service more often because that's your lifestyle. You don't have a big pantry at home, you're in an urban area, and you're going out to eat more often. And you know, you can shake up the rotisserie case. You don't have to do the same old thing. So I think, you know, this is a beef pot roast, turkey breast, wood smoked chicken. We're seeing all kinds of different things going on, even with just a basic item like rotisserie chicken. And leveraging limited time offers. You know, these limited time offers can be a really great way of bringing in fresh business, but you got to communicate it using technology, and that'll bring those consumers in. And millennials clearly want customization and personalization. So the ability to customize products is really popular. Has anyone frequented a mod pizza? Have you guys seen that? So think of Chipotle. You know, Chipotle was the first one that said they had customization. You basically queued up in line and you picked all the different ingredients you wanted for your bowl or your burrito. So there's a new chain called Mod. It's a pizza place, and it's basically the same premise. You queue up in line, they have the flat pizza dough, and you're pointing out what kind of sauce you want. They got 15 different sauces, what kind of cheese you want, what kind of complement you want, and they put it in the oven, and it's this whole idea of customization. And they probably have about $2 worth of ingredients, and they're charging $10 a pizza. And it's that whole idea of being able to customize. So retailers have got to figure that out. The rise of meal adventures, so this idea of broad appeal and then starting to have different, you know, we're a melting pot as a society. So this idea of having, you know, different ethnic type cuisines is becoming more and more important, and you got to match that to your consumer. And, you know, universal appeal with a twist. So you can take a pizza and make it a wood-fired pizza. I believe this one was maple barbecue turkey meatloaf. And then, of course, we're seeing organic rotisserie chickens and things of that nature. The hot new flavors, flavor growth in deli prepared. Traditional flavors are down 9.2, barbecue's down. What's becoming oven roasted, shelf sampler, hot and spicy is becoming very, very popular. Cheese, American up 7.7%. Solution types and meal kits, we did a lot of questions around meal kits, asking consumers what they wanted. So this idea that shopper interests across different solution types, 66% are looking for ready to eat, 65% are looking for made to order, 59% are looking for heat and eat, and 58%. So these numbers are very close. So there's a big proportion that are looking for these different choices. And most haven't heard of, they've heard of meal kits, but they haven't used them. So there was high recognition of meal kits, but when we asked them, have you used them in the last week, month, or 3 months, it was really a low respondents, you know? And there's a group that's totally unaware. 51% said they'd be interested in a primary store offering meal kits versus 22% using delivery. So I think they want to look at that meal kit and see it rather than just ordering it and having it delivered when it comes to retail food service. I know there's a different model for Blue Apron and HelloFresh. Oops. From assembly needed to oven ready. So we're seeing all kinds of different offerings there. What we've learned real quick is that when a customer wants a meal kit, they want it all together. So don't try and send that consumer to different parts or try and get them to combine it. So the old idea of having the soda bottle here and the bread here and the protein here refrigerated and the vegetables over here and telling the consumer you buy all this together, they don't want that. You got to put it together for them, tell them how to cook it, give directions. Ease of preparation is very important for this group. So we have a lot of our retailers that have figured this out and they're putting the meals out ready for them. And variety is very important. You know, one of the things I heard that got Blue Apron in trouble is that the algorithm is, let's say you're on 3 meals a week and you start off with a menu of 15 items and you pick the first item. You don't have 14 to choose from when you go to pick your second item. You may only have 9 to choose from when you pick your second item. And when you pick your second item, you may only have 3 to choose from when you pick your third item. And that's what's causing some of Blue Apron's slippage, because consumers were like, no, I wanted to pick from all 15. They wanted to have that variety. So this idea of consumers wanting to customize, personalize what they want to do is very important. But that's expensive. So there's a problem in trying to put that together. And so variety is very important to them, and portion sizes are very important to them. Having kid and adult options and lunch and dinner options are again also very important for supermarkets in terms of their offerings. And I got the note that I'm running out of time. So conclusions. This is the part you can take away. So I think it's real important to say that you have to focus on conversion. This idea that they're only buying fresh prepared once every 3 weeks, and you have this small percentage that are buying it, you've got to establish this conversion to deli fresh prepared. And I could argue that number 2 should have been number 1, because you won't get conversion until you start becoming top of mind. As a food service operator, you've got to get in their mindset that this is a destination for it. We need to leverage technology. We need to maximize the share of market and connect with our consumers using email and text, the ways they want to be connected. Not necessarily just putting it in our print ad and thinking that that's going to meet the need. We need to provide options for speed. We need to answer that health and wellness. We have to address ambiance, optimize assortment, and consider meal kits as a food service extension. And Jim, I think I made it on time? I know I sped through that. I appreciate your attention. Are there any questions I could answer?
Questions for Rick?
That means I thoroughly covered it. Thank you.
Well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, in your travels, your presentation revealed that innovation was a key theme of what you saw at various outlets. Is there any particular innovation that really stuck out, really surprised you, really impressed you?
So without dropping a particular, we represent a lot of retailers. So I don't want to call anyone out in particular, or I'll get myself in trouble with the trade association. What I'm seeing is some of the retailers are being very thoughtful in their store design, preparing them for the future. And so equipment, the physical location of your food service is an expensive proposition. So when you go in and you put a back of the house, I guess the way I would explain it is, let's say I had a sushi station, I had a pizza station, I had a grab and go station, and let's say I had a Mediterranean cuisine station. If I had equipment behind each of those pieces and they were kind of finite, that really prohibits me over the course of time of changing. And what I'm seeing some retailers do is creating this efficiency in the back of the house. Customer doesn't see that. They're having these modules out front that the consumer can see. And so to replace that module is just a little bit of money to change the facade and change the menu, but all the capabilities are behind the house to be able to cook those cuisines. And those retailers, I believe, are really on the forefront because there is cuisine fatigue. And the consumers are always changing, and there are always new menus and new cuisines that they want. And these retailers that are preparing themselves to make that change with very little capital, I think are the ones that I see the greatest innovation.
John.
In one of the slides, there was that the center store sales were down 1% and fresh or perimeter departments up 0.8.
Right.
That decline in the 1%, consumers are not buying it, or is it channel cannibalization? What do you think?
We believe that it's mostly consumers are driving away from this center of the store product. It's not just cannibalization. We believe that the millennials are making choices to eat more fresh and eat less ingredients. And so when you see those products up and down the center of the store, they're heavily with ingredients. We're seeing CPGs moving fast to what we call clean label product to try and reinvigorate that. But my opinion, it's less an idea of stealing sales from different opportunities. You know, we see C-stores and everyone's selling food now. I think it's actually a consumer trend moving away from these processed products more into fresh. Yeah, that's an extreme. I would never say they're not buying it. They're just not buying as much of it as they once were. So, yes.
Do you see supermarkets accommodating more vegetarians or vegans, especially in the coming year?
I do, because I think that's all part of that health mandate. So, but I will also go back to every retailer is going to figure out what their reputational items are. And so I think for some retailers that are more for that vegan consumer, will start to develop more vegan cuisine. But at the end of the day, retailers have got to figure out how to make money in their food service. They're growing the top line, but they're having a tough time on the bottom line. And we all know that restaurants are one of the highest businesses that go out of business. And they go out of business because they're not making money, right? So supermarkets have got to stop thinking of my produce department, my meat department makes enough money to cover the losses for my food service. They've got to get to the point where food service is making money, and the way they'll accomplish that is when they start to develop cuisines and a reputation for that so they attract that consumer. Vegan is a very healthy option. Health is clearly on the consumer's mind, so I think you will see more vegan options.
Eric, as a supplier, I think sometimes we struggle with how do we get into the deli department, because we're speaking with the produce buyer. A lot of times they don't even have much interface with what's going on in the deli. And then also, you know, our company tends to represent, you know, number one product, not a number two, which again is a lot of times what's being used in the deli. I personally am not seeing a lot of cross promotion between the two, not much branding in the deli department at all. I don't know if you're seeing that in any of your research or if consumers comment, but we see it as an opportunity that retailers really aren't tapping into.
Yeah, you know, it's a complicated question. So some retailers have developed this idea of transferring produce to the deli as a shrink buster. So it's like they're going to take the ugly fruits and veg, move it over to the deli. But unfortunately, and having been a retailer for most of my life, they compete against each other. The produce department's on a P&L and it's trying to achieve its goal. And every time they think that the deli's selling, you know, the deli has a salad bar. And so if the deli's selling salad bar, that's less salad that the produce is going. So it's amazing how much they don't cooperate, you know. I think eventually, if I were a manufacturer, I would be looking for a supply chain stream straight into the deli food service area as opposed to working it through the produce and then into the deli food service. And I think the deli food service area has a lot of development in terms of their supply chain. I think that's why they're not profitable. They have a tendency to treat it like a traditional grocer, and they have to start thinking more like a restaurant or a food service organization. I hope that answered it. Yeah, okay.
Let's thank Rick one more time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next up.